Do I go to the next one after this one?
I think I'll start here. Thanks. So this is the Research Development Proposal Development Workshop Series. Next slide. Thank you for joining us today. This is number one of the academic year, so Research Landscape and Strategy. And our colleague from the Research Engagement Office, Keith Aspinall, is here to give all the wonderful information. We do have the session recorded and we'll email it out to you afterwards along with the slides and anything else. So Keith, I'll just hand it straight over to you and you
Okay.
can get us going on this. If you have questions throughout the session, Keith's going to pause often enough for you to ask those questions live, or feel free to put them in the chat and I can monitor that.
All right. Thanks, Haley. So as Haley said, I'm a senior intelligence, strategic intelligence analyst principal in KE. I've been giving this talk for the PDWs for a few years now. And we started, like Haley said, I'll break after each section if anybody has any questions to break up listening to me for a half an hour. As Haley said, we're looking at understanding the funding landscape by getting a better understanding of sponsors, their programs, how to analyze past awards, and how to use that information to create both a short-term and long-term strategy. And like I said, we'll have some Q&A throughout, or you can save the questions for the end, however you're most comfortable. So starting with understanding the funding landscape, if you are new to seeking out sponsored projects and writing your own proposals or developing your own proposals or new to the process, it can feel like you are sinking in quicksand. There's a lot of obviously different sponsors, requirements for the process of just putting together the proposal. Are you asking the right sponsor? Is it the right program? So it can seem overwhelming. So what this talk is really about is how to be prepared, as our good buddy Scar said in Lion King, to not think of proposal writing and seeking funding as reactive to opportunities that are out right now, but how to look at it more long term. And the long term can be like 1 year to get a better understanding of what programs and sponsors are a good fit for you so that you can plan for those opportunities coming up rather than, again, leaving yourself 6 weeks, 8 weeks that a standard solicitation gives you. The first step of this process is who will fund your work. And you may have already have a solicitation that you've looked at, that you've responded to. So this is part of the process of backing up a little bit to identify the sponsors that are a good fit for you, the programs that those sponsors have that fit the work that you're doing. And again, like I said, that strategy work of making sure you're in the right place, because what this does is allow you to use your time wisely to pursue opportunities that have a higher chance of success because what you want to do aligns with the goals of the program and the sponsor. And this overall process can also help you differentiate yourself from the competition, from other teams elsewhere, to put your best foot forward in your proposal. So obviously there's a wealth of sponsors that can provide funding. Most of this presentation will be focused on the federal space because that's where there's more transparency of information. It can be applicable to other types of sponsors like foundations. A little harder to make work for industry funding, but some of the concepts can still be applied. But just keep in mind, a lot of this will be focused on federal sponsors, and I'll be using National Science Foundation generally as a model because they're the easiest to understand, to see these concepts in action and get practice at doing this process. So the first step with sponsors. This may be an easy part, depending on your research of what is a good fit for you. If you are in health or medical fields, National Institutes of Health, solar energy, you may look Department of Energy or NSF. If you are in the humanities or arts, NEH and NEA. So this part is understanding what the sponsor wants. And if you are beginning the process of seeking funding, it can be valuable to understand uh, three main concepts of like, how is the organization structured that you're interested in? What are their priorities, and particularly their funding priorities? And then how does the money flow in the organization? So the organizational structure is important because there are some entities like National Science Foundation that are extramural funding agencies. What they do is they give grants, where Department of Education does give grants and substantial grants, but they are in particular units within the organization. So by understanding the organizational structure, you can focus your time on those units within sponsors that provide funding. And then that also helps you target your time to understand the priorities of those funding entities. And then when you get into looking at other information about the organization, like budgets or strategic plans, which I'll go into in the next slide, you can see what the funding is like, what the budget is like, and what those how those priorities are being supported by those funding decisions. So to understand a sponsor's aims and objectives, three primary sources are strategic plans, which are generally on a 5-year cycle, budgets, and press and media. So strategic plans, like I said, generally are over a 5-year period. They're very high level. So they generally don't get into targeted examples of work, but you can see the general direction that the sponsor is going, and you can use that information to kind of align your work with the stated goals of the sponsor. Having reviewed federal budget requests, it's not the most exciting work, but when I look at a budget, I'm generally looking at it holistically for the entire university and what's appropriate. In your case, you get to target your research interest. So you can pull up a budget request for a sponsor and do keywords again to kind of sort where is that mentioned in the budget? What kind of work is being talked about around that? Again, this tends to be high level, but you get to see the direction and what the intent of the agency is for the next 2 years or so, and how well aligned are you with that? Not every sponsor will have that level of transparency, so you may need to resort to press or media about recent awards to get that information. And again, this is kind of laying a groundwork. Depending on where you're at in your sponsored research career, whether it's beginning, mid, or whatnot, how you engage with the sponsor changes over time, where right now you want to make sure you're in the right place, understand the organizational setup. And then as you advance in your career, there will be more interest in that relationship development, which we'll talk about in a little bit, to be more competitive for the bigger programs. And so that's kind of the general overview of understanding your sponsors. If anybody has any questions over that section, I can pause there and take them, or I can keep going with programs. Okay, I will keep going then. So with understanding programs, sponsors will have a lot of programs that may have overlapping interests. So finding the right one to devote your time to will again help you be more efficient. And what are the goals so that make sure you're in the right place. And then again, how do you make the work that you want to do a fit for what the program wants? Your first step may be a solicitation or the program page. That gives you some general background. So the solicitation is the now. The program page has a little more perspective, using NSF an example, who has an organization has very robust program pages. You get a program synopsis, information or links to webinars, contact info for the program managers, which are also generally in solicitations. NSF also links to past awards for that program. And all of this gives you more background to understand how to position yourself for that program for success. Those links to contact info for the program managers or for webinars give you a chance to interact with sponsor officials. And if you have the opportunity to do a webinar, a lot of webinars will be focused on kind of like the boilerplate of like what's in the solicitation or background. And the most interesting part can be the Q&As, where you have very easy access to ask questions that interest you, but you also get to hear from other universities, researchers at other universities. And again, as the awards become more competitive in the sense of fewer awards, those questions become more targeted, and you have a better sense of what other researchers are thinking of doing. And again, that can help you position yourself and differentiate your proposal. If you are contacting program officers, which we encourage you to do, I think this will come up in over the course many sessions of the PDWs. Contacting your program managers are critical because their goal is to get good proposals in, and being able to contact them and develop a relationship with them can save you time if maybe your work isn't a good fit. It can provide, they're not necessarily there to guide you to make a good proposal. It's incumbent on you to ask good questions to get there. But I've had some experience with program managers, and like I said, they want to see good options coming in to fund. And you're missing out on a good opportunity to make that happen by not engaging them in the process of writing your proposal, or even before the proposal comes out, if you've identified a program that seems like it's a good fit for you. So a standard process of, be prepared. Don't ask questions that are answered on the program page, or if they have an FAQ or that's in the solicitation. Read that information thoroughly so that you can ask good questions to set up meetings. You do an email, not a cold call. I think that's probably standard. I don't know if anybody cold calls anymore, so you can probably might need to revise that. But and then treat it like an interview where you follow up, because you want them to keep your name in mind and be familiar with you and your work, because that helps in the future. So like I said, that two primary concepts are: how do you make the work that you want to do fit with the program needs? And then you should also have in mind, how are you developing that relationship? And before I get into analyzing past awards, I'll stop again, give anybody a chance to ask a question if you would like. Not, I will power on through. So with award history, different sponsors make it easier or harder to find those awards. Those agencies on the left have databases that you can search. Some are very expansive. Some are a little more narrow, but they do have a database, where the ones on the left are a little more idiosyncratic and may require a little more effort to find that information. Now, analyzing past awards can feel like a big undertaking, but again, it gives you a better understanding of what the agency has funded in the past and how to position yourself in the future. So when you're looking at awards, you're looking at a download of those. You can look at the information on PIs. So how do you compare to past winners? Now, if there's 200 awards, you're not going to go through all of those, but you can cherry pick off of some criteria, awards that maybe are topics similar to yours, other winners that are ASU or a previous institution that you were at, to get a sense of what career stage were they in. Maybe what was their other funding and publication history, which requires a little more background on the work. It's not there in the award history. And then like, what's the field of study? What's there in the abstract or the program title that can give you information on how to structure your own proposal. You can also look at information about institutions and how does ASU compare? Are there specific leaders, universities that have gotten a lot of these awards? Are awards like in the medical field all going to schools with medical schools, which ASU is developing? Is there a geographic consideration? Is there something that the desert Southwest location for ASU would be a benefit that's maybe not represented in those awards? So there's some of the value that you get from this comes from your own experience and what you can glean from it. Now, the competitiveness, very few awards actually say, what percentage they fund. So competitiveness has kind of a loose meaning here. It can be the number of awards that are made, because if a solicitation has 3 awards or 120 awards, the criteria that they're looking for may be a little different in how much you need to differentiate. Something that's a program that's giving a small number of awards, you may need to focus more on that differentiation. Where something that has a large number of awards, you may need to focus more on your capabilities. And that's not to say you don't use the other ones in the other categories, but it's like, what is your area of focus? Is there a change in time over the number of awards? Again, that just gives you background information, and as you do the process, it becomes a little easier to do and make those conclusions to give you some guidance in proposal development. The next one is the research area. This was kind of covered in PI, and some of these go across multiple areas. Is the work that you want to do aligned with what previous awards are? Do you find an easy way to differentiate yourself from what has been funded while still being related to those past awards? And do you see any kind of trend in topics? So using AI as an example, if you're looking at an applied AI project, are you looking at a sponsor that generally funds foundational research? So you want to make sure that you're a good fit, and that would be something to ask a program manager about. Is that something that's explicit in the program? Does that make me not a good candidate, or do you need to find a different program because although you're in the field, your approach is different than what they're looking for? The next one is the composition of the proposal team, the award team, rather. Is it individual? Is it group? Is it interdisciplinary? Is it multi-institutional? At the beginning stages, a lot of it will be individual, but you may benefit from partnerships as programs, as opportunities get bigger and move in the $1 million+ range. Those factors all become more important on who's on your team. How are you bringing together a well-rounded team, and who else are you working with? And you may find like a great program and then realize you don't have that team developed yet. So part of that long-term strategy is, okay, so then how do I get there in a couple of years or next year? What do I need to do over what time span in order to be competitive in this program that funds the work I want to do, but I'm not quite ready yet? And so, rather than looking at it, it's like, okay, I have 8 weeks to kind of throw it together. Let's wait until next year because this is a recurring program, and know what to put in place to be competitive for that. And last is budget and kind of the range of values. And this just kind of verifies information that's generally in solicitations. It may say it goes up to 500K. Are all the awards 500K, or do they range between 100 and 500K? And that, again, gives you background on how to develop your proposal, because a budget is a statement of what you hope to accomplish. And being thoughtful about what you can do with the money that you are asking from the sponsor. So if you know that they fund at that top level every time, that informs you about how to develop the budget and develop the project to meet that target. And then the other note there is like the type of work that it's funding. So that would be information gleaned from the abstract. You wouldn't necessarily have that access to an actual award budget, but in that description of work, you can see, a general alignment of how the work is done in the award. And again, that becomes more fodder for how you engage with program managers. And when you do all that work and you have that list of awardees and whatnot, that also gives you another network to engage past winners, whether it's here at ASU, again, your past institution, or anybody that may exist in your network, where you can ask for advice, what they would do differently, approaches that worked for them. If you are either close or brave, you can ask for their feedback or even their proposal. But again, this develops your network to develop that background so that you have more information to how to make your proposal better. So all of that kind of understanding the sponsor, understand the awards, what the past awards were, what their future strategy looks like, kind of boils down to if you understand what they've funded in the past or want to fund in the future, that can give yourself a competitive advantage. And so when we look at that future strategy, we're trying to find the sponsors and programs that best fit the work that you want to do. And again, how do you differentiate yourself in that space? How do you plan for that? Again, that timeline, whether it's 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, even longer term, what are the resources and assets that you need to build in order to be competitive and do the work that you want to do? So, overall, this is about applying for programs with purpose rather than being reactive to maybe opportunities. And again, not getting stuck on, oh, this opportunity just became available, so I should apply for it. And sometimes you may still need to do that. And some of this background can still help in when that happens. But the purpose of this is really I know that's coming, so that you have 2 months, 4 months, a year before that solicitation comes out, so that you're kind of prepared and that proposal, the official proposal window, is not as stressful. And then this also allows you to think about, again, that's all regarding timing and the relationships that you need to develop in order to put your best foot forward on these. And I'm going to close with an example. This is kind of an example I like if you are exploring a sponsor and their programs, rather than like looking at grants.gov or Haley, I'm blanking. What's the name of the other
SAM or Pivot.
Pivot was the one I was thinking of. So National Science Foundation has 8 directorates. Some of them are very focused. I'm going to focus on the social, behavioral, and economic sciences. So that directorate has 4 divisions that you can see there on the right. And I'm going to focus specifically on that social and economic sciences that invests in the study of how societies, organizations, and economies function, including how decisions are made, how institutions function, and how scientific and technological progress are pursued. If you're reading that, you may not think that applies to you. There's a list of programs on the right, or left rather, that are part of that division. There's ASU's awards since 2018. You can kind of see the very different divisions and colleges that have received funding from this division. And being able to, these programs all kind of have a overarching purpose, but give you a lot of flexibility in how to address it. So in kind of reviewing these programs, you may come across one that says, yes, I can address this problem in this way, even if maybe you're not in, your focus may not be on organizations. So like that science of organizations, but you may have something that gets into that topic. And this would not be a program that may not appear in looking through those other sources because of vagaries of keywords and whatnot. So there is some value in examining a sponsor and their overall programs to find good fits, because again, that's security and preparedness. That feels political, like political science and whatnot, but there's other fields that it will be open to, depending on, again, what your work is. So this has just always been an example of mine that there's what I perceive as unknown flexibility from a well-known sponsor that I think you will only generally discover if you actually kind of review the programs and the offerings that are there. And this may not be appropriate to you, but it serves as an example of not doing a solicitation search, but understanding the sponsor and understanding their programs, you can maybe find opportunities that may not have kind of risen because of how they are publicized. And I will close with this, and this is just kind of like the general approach of to really prepare yourself for funding opportunities and make yourself competitive. You want to learn about the sponsoring program, you read the program solicitation. It makes also the support staff here at ASU happy. Watch webinars and analyze awards when you have the opportunity to do so. Develop that network, talk to program managers, other awardees, and talk to your colleagues. I didn't really talk about that review process, but if you that's part of your network here at ASU, talk about what you're proposing, how it may fit with sponsors. If you know somebody else who's applied for that sponsor of that program, that can all be helpful so that you're responsive to the sponsor needs while still doing the work that you want to do. And with that, I will, that's all I have to present. So I'll open up to questions.
Feel free to raise your hands or simply unmute yourself and ask your question, or if you'd like to put it in the chat, I'll gladly read it for you.
I have a question. Do you know any group or program or whatever, like, I don't know, group of people that like need to talk about maybe the future, how science or how research is moving forward, and that what might be like the future topics that science might be exploring in the next few years? Is this something that we know that exists within ASU?
I don't.
I'm not sure that there is a group. Sorry, Keith, I'm gonna go in there,
Sure.
but I'm gonna take your name down and I'm gonna look into that more and find out. Some of my other colleagues might have a better connection to that. Our research engagement office or some of the individual colleges and departments. Can I ask what department you're in?
I'm in SOLS. I am currently the postdoc for the assistant science of the Anthropocene, which is part of, it's kind of like a transdisciplinary. I was just wondering, like, if there's like, maybe, I know that there's so many events in each of the schools and sometimes we just get lost. And I was wondering if like there is one that like people from different disciplines or even just a discipline that is not mine, but like they meet to discuss about these topics. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't say there's anything. I guess the first few places I would look to is what School for the Future of Innovation Society is doing, what CSPO is doing, any kind of philosophy of science,
Okay.
which I don't know exactly where that. My first thought is that's in philosophy, but I don't know that for sure. But those would be like the three. The first two are entities and organizations and units. The last one is would require a little more digging, but I mean that's where I would start. But that might be something that's more informal in groups, and if it's publicized, it may be more of a one-off thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I did put our team email in the chat. If you'd like to ask a question via email, you can do that as well, and we'll get back to you. If there are no other questions, I think there's one more slide, Keith, if you don't mind.
There's that one, which I don't think is the one that I don't think that's the one you meant.
No, that's our website, which you can go to and find our contact information or other relevant things. And I think there's one more.
Yep. Well,
or maybe the first. Yeah, we'll just do the first slide again because that's what I want to talk about.
Yeah, I don't know. It was there at the end. I don't know why. Oh, I skipped over it in questions.
No worries. I'm going to highlight this because there were some questions in the chat. This proposal development workshop series is an entire series of of elements of the proposal development process. So we've broken it down into what we think are these major chunks that are really important. There are different speakers at each one of these events that have expertise on these topics. I see Daniel was here. He's speaking at one of our editing events. He's an editor in Fulton Schools of Engineering. We've got budget professionals. But if you're interested in this specific pre-planning type stage, definitely come to the next in the series, the On the Horizon. Quinn's here, he's speaking at that one. That's going to be looking at, the federal perspective of things that are coming up, right? Where did this proposal come from? And I'll give a brief overview of the federal budget and the solicitation engagement process, that type of thing. So if you're looking for that pre-proposal or pre-writing phase, definitely come to that one. But I suggest you sign up for all of them and then come to all of them. That'll wrap us up for today, I think. Thank you, Keith, so much for kicking us off on the
Welcome.
first of the series. And we'll send out this recording to everybody in the chat. Let me pause.